What is going on, everyone? Now, to start this off, I will say I was put on to this show by my thumbnail artist and good friend, CuriTuber, link will be in the description, and he told me to check out this new show coming out called The Rehearsal by Nathan Fielder. And he was like, I'm really looking forward to this because I saw his last show, Nathan for You, and I think it's something that would be up your alley, and I think it would be good for a review. I had no idea who this guy was, what the show was going to be. I watched the trailer for it when it came out, and I wasn't sure if it was a reality show or if it was a scripted series. It just screamed weird, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And now, having watched it, the first episode, mind you, that is all that is out right now, this show is unlike anything I have ever seen. It's baffling to me how unique and fresh this show is in its concept and what's going on, and I was not expecting it in the slightest bit. I really appreciate all of the effort that goes into this show, but I will talk about that the longer we go into this discussion. So, you're probably asking yourself now, what is The Rehearsal? Who's this Nathan Fielder guy? Well, as for who Nathan Fielder is, I still don't know. Obviously, this is the only show that I've seen of his that he's created. I haven't watched his previous show, Nathan for You. But as for what The Rehearsal is about, you've ever had that feeling where you're like, I wish I could redo this situation because then I could make it better. Or I wish that I knew everything that was going to happen so I could choose the way that I want it to be. The simplest explanation for what they do in this, it's the rewind ability from Life is Strange. In Life is Strange, you were able to choose your path, rewind, and see all the outcomes for every dialogue tree, and you got to choose which one you wanted. That is exactly what Nathan Fielder and his team have done with this show. They take an upcoming scenario, a conversation or event that you're going to have with a person that you know in the future, and they recreate what that scene is going to be. The area that it's going to be in, they get stand-in actors to play the people that are going to be in the area if it's a public place. They get a doppelganger actor to learn the mannerisms and speech patterns of the person that you're going to be talking to, or persons potentially. Like I said, haven't seen all 6 episodes yet. And they then script out multiple different scenarios and different variations of the situation so that you are prepared for your conversation in the future. The best way they show this is the cold open of the show. When the show starts off, Nathan comes in, he meets the first guest civilian that's going to be on the show, Core. And the two of them meet, they have a conversation, everything seems to be going normally and fine, and then Nathan sits down in his chair and he starts describing to him what the rehearsal is about. And as Nathan describes what the show is about and how they reconstructed Core's apartment and how they learned his speech patterns from the way he spoke to his crew that secretly, approached him and got into his apartment. They got a stand-in actor that looked like him and could act like him, and they went through all the list of different things that could potentially happen, and it paralleled moments that happened when Nathan actually went and met Core. He made a joke about a book, and it paralleled from the actor, reacting in the way that Core was acting to how the real Core actually reacted in the sequence. And I was just sitting there like, oh my God! That is incredible. Just the idea behind that. It's not impossible to do something like that. However, the meticulousness and the effort that you would need to do something like that is ridiculous. Like, I commend people that are able to write out entire stories, like Oda, who made One Piece, like all the different things that connect it in the world, that bring everything together. It's crazy that he thought everything down to that level of detail. This is on a whole nother level, though. No offense, obviously, I love One Piece, please don't attack me, but this is just crazy, especially since it's real people. It's one thing when you're writing a work of fiction, right? But when you're writing something about what a real person would say, guessing what they're going to say or how they're going to react or how something is going to affect the scenario is phenomenal. The fact that they're able to do this is crazy. Now, obviously, they don't show you every draft, every script, and everything that Nathan and his team write to get this flow going, but you do see a lot of their process, and you see their failed attempts and things that end up not working out or not actually happening when the confrontation happens, because that's something they actually do. It's not just this whole rehearsal thing is like, yeah, we're going to help you and we're going to align everything in parallel. No, they actually show the confrontation or the event itself by the end. You see what happens after all this practicing, and you get to see if it actually worked, or if it failed, or if there was a new factor that they didn't take into account that throws everything off of the rails. It's really, truly incredible. I can't describe anything else that I've ever seen that's like this. It's really just baffling. I can't understand how you came up with this idea, especially since when you pitch a show idea, you need to have a concise format, right? You need to have a way to get it across to the board members. I don't know how you could simply describe this show because it's just complex in its basic nature. The way I did explain the show to you, it took me like a couple of minutes just to get it across just because of how weird it is. So I don't know how they were able to pitch this show, get it picked up, and actually manage to do it. It's crazy. But if you're still not sold on it, if you still want more, if you don't believe me from telling you all these fantastic things, then I'm going to go into spoilers now into the first episode of the show. So I will go into more detail as to what happens with Core and his story and how that wraps up to sell you more on the show if you aren't sold already. So that being the case, if you do not want to be spoiled, please take my word for it. Check out The Rehearsal. It is on HBO Max. It uploads new episodes once every Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please check it out. I really love the show. I would like it to continue, and it would inspire more weirder shows to be made in the future. It's like, hey, this weird, uncommon show did really well. Maybe we can branch out and let more indie developers and people who have more obscure ideas take the helm and get into the mainstream, because I would very much love that. So please check out this show. And for those of you who are still waiting for more convincing from me talking about the first episode, let's go. So, as I was mentioning earlier, the first episode revolves around a character named Core. Core is a man who lied to his long-term friends that he had a master's degree. When he met his friends as he was younger, he mentions that all of his friends had master's degrees and they believed he also had one, and he couldn't bring himself to tell them that he didn't have one because he didn't want them to look down on him or to taint the friendship so that they wouldn't become close. And I understand that. I understand that some people, they have, insecurities and they can't get across what they actually are to people because they're afraid of how others will react. I completely understand that. So Nathan approaches Core and he's like, hey, so you want to tell your friends, specifically one friend in particular who he believes is going to handle it really poorly, you want to tell your friend that you don't have a master's degree, but you're afraid of how she's going to react to it. So me and my team will do a rehearsal and recreate the scenario that will take place in the future, and we will run down all the different options and different things that she could say to as close as a realistic degree as we possibly can, so that when you go into the final conversation with her, you're prepared and you can steer the conversation in a way that you want to end, so that it will end happily ever after, so that you will not have to be concerned about what's going on. And Core accepts. So the episode begins and they start establishing how everything's going to go down. Core says that him and his friends love trivia, so he's going to take his friend Patricia, if I remember correctly, he's going to take her out and go to a bar that they go to trivia night for. They're going to go there, they're going to sit at the specific table. So they go to the bar, they walk in, cameras and photography, get a recreation of it through imagery and digital editing and so much, and then they rebuild it as a set in whatever studio Nathan has for his show. And then they fill it with all the memorabilia and everything down to the last core detail that's in the show. And something that I thought was unique is that Core mentioned that there is a balloon in the top of the bar. It's like stuck on the air conditioning and it's never fallen down. He never noticed it, but Nathan pointed it out to him when he made the replica, and he said, did you know that was actually there in your real bar? And he's like, no, I didn't. I never really looked up to glance and noticed that, just to show how meticulous they were in recreating every aspect of this place. So this place is a one-to-one recreation, down to even the grummy scuff and everything on the tables. So you have that designed. Then what happens next is they need to have a doppelganger actor play Trisha. So they need someone who can talk like his friend, act like his friend, even so he even looks like her a little bit, so that he isn't thrown off when he actually sits in front of his friend and he doesn't know what to say because they're actually in front of him. So in order to do that, they get an actress who then goes and they fake an interview with Core's friend. They call her out, they go to a park, and Core's friend comes and sits down and meets with the actress that she doesn't know is an actress. And they have a 30-minute conversation, and that gets across her opinion. They learn that Core's friend is a very abrasive person. She likes to talk a lot, and she doesn't really let you get a word in once she gets the ball rolling. And then the actress studied her mannerisms and her speech patterns, and she kind of understood what kind of a person she was to a degree, not saying, morality-wise, just how she would talk so that she could act as her. And then they got everything started. So they picked a table for Core to sit at. They're like, okay, is this a table you want to sit at the night of the event? Cool. So you're going to take this table. And then it's like, all right, first obstacle, it's like, what happens if this table is taken? What are you going to do? So then you see that at the end of the episode, when Core actually gets to the establishment, he tried to go there early so that the table would be empty. A couple that happened to be there. So they prepared for that, and they had a contingency plan. And Core told the story about how his mother was sick, and the two of them used to come there all the time, and that was the table they sat at, so he asked the couple to move. So, granted, pretty sure that was a lie. So that couple that got lied to on streaming television, national television, whatever this is considered, I'm sorry that you got bamboozled like this. That being said, so they prepared Core for that. Then we get into the actual rehearsal of the conversation. So first off, it's a trivia night. So there's going to be a trivia test. So Nathan and his team made a bunch of random trivia nonsense. It's based off of like TV and history, and they start playing the game. And the first major obstacle that Nathan comes across is that Core is such a fan of trivia that he does not like losing. And when he started losing at trivia, he would completely ignore the fact that he's supposed to tell his friend that he doesn't have a master's degree. And when that happens, Nathan's like, uh-oh, this is bad, because hypothetically, if the night of the trivia match, it's a bunch of questions that he doesn't know the answer to, and he starts losing, he's not going to confess. And that's going to make this whole thing pointless. So how do we get past this? And he tries at first talking to Core, and it's like, hey, I've noticed you don't really focus on the confession when you're failing at trivia. This isn't really that important. It's a non-profit trivia night. The main thing is telling your friend the truth. That's the whole point of this scenario. And I'm not going to lie, I understand it's his hobby and he's extremely passionate about it, but Nathan was right in this situation. Like, if you have something important to tell to someone, losing one game night of trivia is extremely insignificant, because Core was very adamant about this. He's like, no, can't do that. He's like, I don't like cheating and I don't want to lose. I really admire trivia and I care about it a lot. And if I'm losing, I'm not going to go for the confession, because that's just not going to be my speed. It's going to throw me off my game. And it's just like, dude, like, it would be one thing if this was you by yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you were privately doing this, like if this was just an isolated incident and you're just like, nah, tonight's not a good night. Trivia night didn't go too well. I don't really like how I'm feeling right now. I'm not really in the zone. I don't want to do it. But at this point, it's like you have this entire Hollywood team doing this whole recreation of everything, and it's like, this trivia night is nearly not as important as this team that has spent, I don't even know how long, having to recreate this and do all these takes with you to help you like get this across. Like, sure, they're getting paid, it's making good television, but at the end of the day, this is still work. They're still doing all of this, and like, if they put in all this effort and it ends up being pointless, it's like, come on, man. This trivia night's not that important. But that's splitting hairs. So that's their first major thing. And Nathan's like, crap. So I need to get him around this. I need to make sure that he wins at trivia night. And he tried first making a bunch of random tests to get him prepared for it. And unfortunately, that wasn't really working because sometimes he did well and he did confess, other times he did poorly and he didn't. And it's like we have no idea what the test is going to be during that particular trivia night, so we can't do anything about this. And although Nathan had an apprehension against cheating, he eventually decided that in order to ensure that Core ends up telling his friend the truth, he needs to make sure that he does well. So he secretly tricked the manager of the bar that was going to be running the trivia night into giving him the answers for the test. And then he subliminally implanted the answers to said trivia night into Core's mind. So then you get a bunch of montages of Nathan and Core out walking, discussing things, and Nathan would establish stand-in actors around town as they're walking around that would then tell them information. You know, they would say what the answer was to something, so hopefully it would stick in Core's mind somewhere, so when the question came up at the trivia night, he would be able to answer it without any fault, and he would have confidence. And I thought that was really cool. I think some of the way they tried to weasel it in there was a little ham-fisted, because just for me, like, if I know I've worked with this guy that's doing this rehearsal thing and doing all these takes and like recreations of the thing, I'd be wary of any time that I was with him, especially since the first time I would have talked to him would have been a setting that he recreated. So I would be wary of that, and it's just the way that some of these people were talking. It's just like, bro, really? Like this?
Days like these, and I curse the Chinese for inventing gunpowder.
Wow. That's crazy.
So it feels very obvious to me, the audience, but I feel like I also would have been a little wary of it if I was Core, just for the sake of the fact of like who Nathan is and the circumstances by which we met. Like, if people started just randomly talking like that, I would have just been like, that's weird. It's kind of odd that we're in these people that are spitting out random facts. Okay. I see. Okay. So I would have been a little wary of that. But that then takes over their first major step in the issue. And speeding up a little bit, then, you know, obviously they're doing more takes, and you see Nathan, he's got like his laptop strapped up to him, and he's got all these different dialogue trees, like a freaking RPG video game where everything has like all these different you know what it reminds me of? The dialogue trees in Detroit Become Human or something like that, or games of that caliber, where you can like open up a tree and it's like every action you make has a branching path that leads you to blah 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 blah. That's what his laptop reminded me of when I was looking at it. So then they come across like, hey, so you're at a bar, right? There are waitresses. So what happens if you're like out of a drink? A waitress could come and interrupt you as you're in the middle of your confession. So maybe you want to keep a little bit in your drink so that she doesn't come by and ask you if you want to refill and kill your momentum. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sure. And then it's like, okay, you said you're going to do it after you order the pizza or whatever, so you want to order the pizza at this point, so then it gets out within this amount of time, because it's the average amount of time that the pizza comes out, so that way you'd be able to talk to her while her mouth is full, so she wouldn't be able to interrupt you and leave a rambling statement so that you can't get a word in, and it ruins the whole confession, you know, so on and so forth. So they keep going along the path like that to get things done. And I'm like, okay, this is really good. I like this. And then you have the actress who is playing his friend, and seeing his actual friend Trisha at the end of the episode and seeing the actress who played her, she actually did a really good job of portraying this person that she met like once and probably studied for who knows how long. So that was really cool, seeing how her mannerisms and speech patterns were the same, or at least similar enough that it worked out in the vein they needed it to. So you have all these different ways. They had like, what if it goes well? What if it goes poorly? And they went through all of that bit by bit to get Core prepared for the night in question. And then, as I mentioned, the night in question happens, and when Core gets there, the table is preoccupied. So he lies to the people to get them away from the table, and he secures the table. He gets them drinks that they practice. They practice the drinks he was going to get them at the bar, and it's just like, this is so good. I love attention to detail with this. So he goes, gets the drinks like he did in the rehearsal, sits down, she walks in, he literally greets her the same way he's been doing in the rehearsal all the time. I think he called her like Trisha Dish or something like that. Greets her, they sit down. They're like he's like, okay, my friend Trish, every time we kind of meet up, she talks about a problem that she's had during the day. So they sit down, they're talking, and then Trish goes into her problems of the day. She starts rambling about that. It's like, okay, things go to plan. And then the trivia starts. And Core doesn't get the first question right. And Nathan says, he's like, I was a little concerned that maybe the subliminal messaging didn't work, and he was going to kind of spiral downward on this and not confess. But he said after that first question, things started going more smoothly. He started getting more questions right, and things were going well, and he had confidence in himself. So then, after the trivia ended up wrapping up, Core went and placed their order for pizza, and he sat down, and he started getting a little nervous to tell her the truth, and he ended up telling her the truth a little bit early, and it didn't help that the pizza ended up getting delayed, so he started to tell her the truth, and then he got called away because he had to go get the pizza. So then he came back with the pizza, and he went into the confession, and he's talking about it, and he's getting everything off of his chest, and thankfully, everything went smoothly. You know, his fears that his friend wouldn't take it nicely ended up being blown out of proportion. She took it well. She was just like, no, it's fine. And, you know, we've been friends for years. I wouldn't let this, like, destroy our friendship, because I didn't mention this earlier, but Core mentions that they've been friends for, like, over a decade. So it's like it was like a decade or two, possibly, but it's a really long time. So, you know, everything ended up going smoothly. She accepted it. And then the show has a nice closer where Core and Nathan talk to each other, and Nathan, because obviously he felt, you know, bad about the misconduct that he did to, like, subliminally message Core about the trivia answers, even though, again, that is the least important thing in this scenario. Like, yeah, you kind of cheated at a trivia night. I get you don't want to do that, but the main thing was you telling your friend that you didn't have a master's degree. That was the whole point of this entire mission. So you kind of, like, I don't want to say he brought this on himself by, you know, not being able to move past it, but it's also just like, this is a weird cross to die on, man. It felt like you were using this as an excuse to not have to tell them, if that makes any sense. So it ends with Nathan, he tells Core what he did, and we don't actually see what Core said to Nathan. We see that Nathan did another rehearsal of him telling Core that he basically, you know, implanted the answers to the trivia night into his head throughout the conversations that they had been having. And Nathan expected that one of the outcomes, because of how big of a trivia fan Core is that Core would have snapped at him and called him a horrible person. And we don't know what the real Core said. I'm hoping that it didn't go that poorly, and that, you know, it kind of just ended, because Nathan does tell Core that he thinks he's a nice person, so I don't think it went at nearly as bad as that, but I feel like Core definitely would have been upset after learning this information, so he may have said something to Nathan, but I don't know, that's just speculation and hearsay. And then the episode kind of rounds off, and that's when the credits roll, and it ends there, and I'm like, that was incredible. Like, it's good reality TV, which is surprising, because most reality TV sucks. You know, it's all a bunch of just drama and nonsense, and it's just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're a grown adult. Why are you doing this stuff? This isn't entertaining. I just think you're an idiot. And not in the fun kind of way, like an absurdist comedy, like the pathetic kind. You know? So, the show ended really well. And it was like somber note kind of thing. And I'm like, all right, I'm really invested in the next episode. And what I loved about it is that at the end of this episode, they had like a little teaser for the next episode. I still have no idea what the next episode is going to be about. I don't really know who the person is going to be that is going to go into the next episode. I don't know what their deal is, like what the scenario is going to be. I have no clue. And I like that. It made me go, oh man, I'm excited. I don't know what's going on here. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think The Rehearsal is a phenomenal show. It's extremely unique, as I mentioned many times. There isn't really anything like it that I can say or attribute. You know, if you happen to know something like this, obviously not his other show, because it's his other show, so if it's similar to this show in any capacity, of course it is. He made it. But if you happen to know of any other show that's similar in this capacity, let me know, because I'm kind of interested now, because I really like this, and again, I really want it to do well. So I hope that I was able to convince you by detailing and breaking down what happened in this episode, what you would expect from the show, and it's enticed you and made you want to watch it, because I do think the show deserves good ratings. and I would love to see more weirder shows like this get into the forefront. You know, studios tend to be afraid to take on new and weird ideas because,
The algorithm felt it wasn't hitting the right taste clusters.
you know, that stuff is extremely unfortunate. But I really did love the show. I hope it does well. And if this video does well, I'll probably come back and do another video after the season is over, because I can't really see me having a lot to say week by week rather than just rehashing the episode without it being something fresh. You know, I detailed this episode to get you, the skeptical watching this video, to watch the show. You know, that's what I did this part for. But going week by week, I don't know if I have anything to say, like how I just talk about superhero shows, you know, week to week, because I gush over them. I love superheroes. So that really about wraps it up. Nathan Fielder, you've done a fantastic job making the show. I will be watching all the other episodes that come out, and I really hope you continue doing great work, because this was incredible. So finally, thank you, my thumbnail artist Pascal, for putting me onto the show. Really appreciate that, man. And lastly, I am the innocent villain, and remember, folks, you're innocent until proven villainous, and I will catch you in the next one.